You see B2B SaaS companies' attribution stacks at their worst. That's the moment MAVAN gets brought in to audit them. What is the most common attribution failure you encounter, and what does it actually cost the company in terms of misallocated spend or invisible CAC inflation? Walk us through like a specific build, what was broken, what you changed, and what the team could suddenly see that they couldn't before.
Most common failure, I think there's two. Attribution essentially is like last touch, and they look at the amount spent and they look at what came in, and it's a workable system in theory. At smaller scale, I wouldn't say it's particularly workable at large scale, but that's how we all started and how this industry begins. But it's not really allowing you to mature or treat your product, or if you have multiple product offerings, right? There's a whole lot of issues with that sort of base thing. And so, usually we kind of come in and basically kind of point that out and then actually treat these things like as individual business units within the business itself and kind of the different audiences and all that stuff as well. So there's that one. The other one we'll call the Frankenstein approach, right? Where as companies grow, and especially founder-led ones, you just kind of build stuff as you need it. Engineering resources are scarce, resources in general are scarce. And so you're going to only build the stuff that you really need and when you need it. And there is no we've got this 6-year roadmap and we're going to build this and we've got an engineering team of 40. If you're at that point, amazing, but you're definitely not a startup, really, in my mind at that point, or at least not one that's struggling and founder-led at that point. So this is one of those things where as you mature and you've got to make that pivot moment to kind of bring on somebody that's growth or to really hit that mature step where you want to grow this company, you have this problem that the Frankenstein pieces don't necessarily all work together. You might have a creature now that has 5 arms and no legs, right? Where you're like, well, we've built a thing and it worked, but now we actually have to kind of take a step back and figure out how to make an efficient growth machine that is scalable to the point we want. You go out there and you raise 8 figures, 9 figures, at which, how large expectation of that is goes towards marketing. Yeah, you're going to run into some real problems really quickly with a Frankenstein together system. And so there needs to be that moment of well, we've raised the money, but before we can deploy it effectively and in a way that we are sure that we're going to get it and grow this revenue stack and have all these kind of answers that we want to be able to get from having this increased budget and a more mature marketing org, you have to kind of go back and fix a lot of those issues. And that could be anything from adding attribution, multi-touch attribution across the board. We have everything from some funnels are on first touch, some are on last touch, right? There's a whole lot of different things that can be factored into that Frankenstein model, and they won't all be consistent. They won't all be the same for any company. So we have to kind of come in and figure out those out and then offer a solution.
Most SaaS companies track MQLs and demo bookings. So boards want to see CAC payback and net new ARR. How do you actually bridge those two worlds? What does the conversion tracking need to look like? And what specific integrations or operational changes does a typical company need to make to get from we report on leads to we can tell you the CAC payback period by channel and segment?
Yeah, it goes back to attribution and the depth of it. At some point, people kind of look at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and that's it. And the honest part is at the top of that funnel between the first, they've just been introduced to the brand for the very first time, or first ad for the first time, to that sort of MQL stage has a whole bunch of steps in it. And those are varying different timelines for each different segment and different audience, for different industries, different products, right? There's a whole lot of variables that go into that top element. You need to be able to track and actually know what's going on. How are you telling the story of your product or your company if you don't know in what order they're seeing the images or the story that you're telling, or if they're just seeing things kind of haphazardly blown out there into the various platforms. If you're on LinkedIn, for example, or if you're on Instagram Reels, those are probably two very different experiences for a different person, right? Reels is probably not something they're doing at work on their computer, but LinkedIn might be, because one's socially acceptable to do, whereas the other isn't. And you kind of have to tailor those experiences, but those are different touches towards you being able to lead and tell them a story about your product. And that's one of those things that a lot of companies just don't necessarily have a full vision on that. I found a lot of companies necessarily don't know what order or what ads they even really saw by the time someone converted, right? We saw them, this is the first one that got them. This is a lead that came in and we got the info, email and all that stuff. And then this is the one when we closed it and it was revenue. And those are decent standpoints, the minimum data points, I would say. But the ones that actually then end up going and actually knowing what happens in all of that are the ones that actually look at that top and mid funnel steps to get from one to the other. There'll be an element of you interact with our ad. So that'll be a click to page view on one of our landing pages. But the next interaction might be that they just bailed. And so then the next one might also be a click and then a landing page view and then another click and a landing page view. But you're able to look at those in order. You can actually see like, oh, they're interested about cost, and then they bailed, but maybe either we didn't have enough information about costs on there, or now we can lower them, or maybe that was just like they're not in the right moment to make that decision. Like some of these SaaS products they're not cheap, right? Like the LTVs on these things are much higher than like gaming, or in the bids for it are much higher in terms of getting folks to an actual converted contract. You have to hit them exactly at the right time that they were going to make a decision about making a large software decision for an entire company, and that's a very small segment for a very small number of people who can single-handedly make that decision, right? Most people kind of go to work, they have to kind of tell it to their bosses, there's a committee, there's a bunch of like competitor research, they do these pitches, they have a meeting. If you're in a corporate world, this is probably like a 5 to 9 month decision. So that's one of those things where like, yeah, okay, so you hit them at the right time in terms of educating them on the product. The decision and the minute to close on that deal might be months away, and so you have to be able to know how you told that story and be able to then link it back once that actual like contract closes.
Marketing budgets have dropped to around 7.7% of revenue. Every SaaS marketing leader is being asked to do more with less. When you come into a company and audit their spend, where do you most commonly find waste that they didn't know existed? What's the quick diagnostic someone can run on their own to find the biggest budget leak?
If you're really all in on search and search really effective for you, you're going to keep pushing the search button, right? Like, and give me more deals, right? Like, which is understandable, but there's also an element at some point, the friction of that, or you're kind of forcing that channel and you're trying to find the lesser known keywords or whatever, right? Because you're not competitive on all the ones you can kind of see. At some point it's an arms race between you and a competitor if you're in SaaS. And so now you're kind of looking at like, well, how else do I find out things within this search bucket to like get ahead? And it just turns out that's incredibly hard to do, like, and at least effectively. And so some of the things we end up suggesting are, you should just cut some of this stuff on here. Like, hey, this is like completely wasted spend in terms of like expansion on this specific channel. And there's a bunch of other stuff you can try. The interesting thing about SaaS in the B2B world is it's begun expanding way beyond the normal means, right? It used to be search, Google and Bing. Then it was basically LinkedIn. That was kind of it. Now we're seeing that's kind of expanding heavily into like paid social. Instagram and Facebook, even TikTok are now kind of having like B2B style ads that are kind of working and targeting very specific individuals on those platforms. So now it's that element of like, well, if there's a way for you to expand and you're not doing it, and it's a massive scale network like Meta or like TikTok, like you probably should try something there rather than trying to find the next like 20 keywords that your competitor totally hasn't thought about, because they probably have, and you're now going to get into a bidding war and an arms race on even more keywords that are just going to eat up budget to a degree, right? You don't even necessarily know if that's working for your competitor, or whether you're now just kind of like, we're getting as many keywords as we possibly can, right? And we're looking at that amount spent, and we're looking at what comes in, and we hope that it's profitable. The ROAS is in the right direction.